Hello everyone and welcome once again to The View from the Midwest. It's time for another Bleedin' Blue edition as we look at the NHL Central. Let's get right into it. The St. Louis Blues obviously didn't have the greatest of weeks, although it ended up pretty good with a high note there at the end. They went 2-2 over the week, as you read in the article, losing the first two games on the road and then coming home for a couple games. The first one a little bit tighter, the second one not quite so much, but the St. Louis Blues have righted the ship, at least for now. For how long is the question. Looking at the rest of the division, those of us who were kind of hoping that the early season Chicago Blackhawks were the ones that we were going to see all season have been sorely disappointed since then. Chicago went undefeated on the week. After a slow start, they're pretty much on fire right now. They won all four games, as I mentioned last week, and are winners of 6 straight and 7 of their last 8. Their defense is still a little bit shaky right now, but the offense is more than making up for it here lately. They beat the Flames 5-1 on Tuesday, beat the Avalanche 4-0 on Thursday, and took both games against the Stars in a home and home. They beat Dallas 3-2 and then 4-3 at home. They got goals from Nicholas Hjalmarsson, 3 for Patrick Kane, 2 for Artemi Panarin, 1 for Tyler Mott, 2 for Artem Anisimov, 3 for Marian Hossa, who has continued his hot start, 2 for Jonathan Kane, and 1 for Ryan Hartman and Richard Panik. Moving right along, the Nashville Predators continued their poor start to the season. Many thought that Nashville was going to be a division contender, and they still could be. But they're digging themselves a little bit of an early season hole here, and they didn't improve on it very much in this last week. They went 1-2 and have lost 5 of their last 6, so not a very good start for the Predators. They thumped the Avalanche, which is going to be a recurring theme throughout this video. They beat them in that game by the score of 5-1. They then dropped consecutive 3-2 decisions, one in Arizona and then at home to Carolina. They got goals from Matt Irwin, who had 3, Roman Josi, 3 for Craig Smith, 1 for Ryan Johansson and James Neal. This week it's going to be 3 games. They open up at home against Ottawa on Tuesday, then they face the Blues on Thursday before rounding out their week with the Ducks on Saturday. The Dallas Stars, it's not been a great week in Dallas either. They had pretty much the same record other than that 6-2 drubbing of our very own St. Louis Blues. They lost 3 of 4 during the week. We already discussed their back-to-back losses to Chicago over the weekend. The week began with a 3-2 loss in Columbus, and then they somewhat righted the ship against St. Louis. Their offense came to life. Their defense was able to slow down the Blues, but it was not enough to really save their week overall. They had 2 goals from Jason Spezza, 2 for Tyler Seguin. Patrick Eaves scored, 2 for Jonas Klingberg. Jordy Ben scored. Steven Johns scored. Brett Ritchie, Curtis McKenzie, 2 for Gamel Smith. This week it's going to be a Western Canadian sweep for the Dallas Stars as they have that long Western road trip. It's Winnipeg on Tuesday, then Thursday against the Flames, the Oilers on Friday, and then rounding out with the Canucks over the weekend. Moving right along, the Minnesota Wild didn't have a very productive week. They only had 2 games, and they lost them both, so not a very good week for Minnesota. Really start things off after they had come into the week as the division leaders. They dropped a 2-1 decision to begin the week against the Buffalo Sabres, and that was at home and on Tuesday, and then they got blanked by Colorado 1-0 on Saturday, so Minnesota not really pulling their weight as far as everyone in the division having a pretty good week against Colorado. The only goal for Minnesota came from Mikkel Granlund, obviously in that 2-1 decision to Buffalo. It's another slow week for Minnesota as they won't play until Thursday, and it'll be all on the road as they play the Penguins on Thursday and then the Senators on Saturday. Speaking of the Avalanche, they didn't have a good week at all, and it wasn't just on the ice. Unfortunately, they received some sad news over the weekend that Marek Svatos passed away at the all-too-early age of 34, so some very sad news there. Svatos did have a very weak connection to the Blues in 2010. He was on their preseason roster. He did not make the ultimate team. He was released and then picked up off of waivers by Nashville. But still, there are fans that remember him in St. Louis, and obviously, based on some of the online reaction, a lot of fans in Colorado that were upset at his passing, which is very understandable. 34 years of age is all too young to be talking about the death of someone. And then things really didn't pick up over the weekend on the ice for Colorado either. They lost 3 of 4 last week, which in the grand scheme isn't all that important considering the other news, but it does still affect the team. They lost 5-1 to Nashville on Tuesday, 4-0 to Chicago on Thursday, beat Minnesota 1-0 on Saturday, and then obviously got blown out 5-1 by the St. Louis Blues on Sunday. They got goals from Jerome McGinley, Gabriel Landeskog, and Matt Duchene. This week it's going to be all home games for the Avalanche. They face the Coyotes on Tuesday, Jets on Friday, and then the Bruins on Sunday. Speaking of the Jets, they capped off another poor week for themselves and for the division overall. It's really a lot of the Central teams outside of Chicago really didn't have a great week. They capped off their poor week by dropping 3 of 4. Their lone win coming in Friday, which was a 5-3 win over the Detroit Red Wings. Before that, it was losing at home to the Capitals, 3-2 at home, and then on the road in Washington, that was a 4-3 overtime loss. So they did pick up a point in that one, but still did not get the ultimate decision. They ended the week with a 5-2 loss to New York. That was the Rangers on Sunday. They got goals, 3 from Mark Scheifele, 2 from Adam Lowry, Marco Dano, Toby Enstrom, 2 for Brandon Tanev, 2 for Patrick Laine, and Nikolai Ehlers rounded out the scoring for the Winnipeg Jets. So let's take a quick look at the standings right now as they stand. In the Central Division, Chicago is currently in first. They have 19 points on the season with a record of 9-3-1. The Blues are in second with 16 points. 7-4-2 is their record. 13 points for Minnesota. They are currently 6-4-1. Behind them, it's going to be Winnipeg with 11 points at 5-7-1. Then it is Colorado at 5-6-0. 10 points for them. Nashville is 3-5-3 for 9 points. And that will round out the division in terms of the standings. So that'll wrap up for our show today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully I can wake up a little bit because apparently I left my brain in the bedroom. So I apologize for a few more stutters in this one, and we will hopefully iron those out by next week. But until the next time, I hope to see you then.